Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew McCaddy. I am the astrophotography officer for UAS, and this is the astrophotography processing workshop. So let's just dive right into it. First, we're gonna go to all of our folder files that we have. Make sure that you open up Photoshop, and all you want to do is drag in that TIFF file I told you guys to download before straight into Photoshop. And right now, it's appearing very, very blue. Also, a couple few things before we actually get started. Make sure you go up to Window, Workspace, and select Photography so you have a very similar layout as me throughout this entire uh, demonstration. So this is looking pretty blue right now. So what we're going to do is make it so it's not blue. So we're going to go over to this left side over here and select the color sampler tool, which if you right click it, if you have the eyedropper tool, just right click it and go to the color sampler tool. And what we want to do from here is just select one spot we know is a dark spot in the image and one spot that we know is a bright spot like a star in the image. So I'm just going to zoom in over here, choose a random spot. This looks like it would be dark. Choose right over here. And then I'm probably going to choose this star right here. Yeah, it looks all right. So I've chosen these. We're going to zoom back out. And for you guys, I'm using touchscreen so I can just touch my screen. But for you guys, you can use this over here in Zoom. Then if you're zoomed in, you can also just move it around like this. But yeah, zoom back out. Okay, awesome. So the first adjustment we're going to want to do is the levels adjustment, which is under adjustments. So once you select that, you'll get this window right here. And all we will want to do here, spot number one is our dark area. Spot number two is our highlighted area of the star. We want all these numbers to be 255 or somewhere around there, which is already it is, but we're going to slightly adjust it to make it. So what I'm going to do here, click this drop down menu, go over to red, and make this just slightly, like just 5 more units, which I'm going to use with this white kind of metering scale over here. So I'm just going to drag it over till it's right there. Don't want to drag it over too much. Then I'm just going to be doing the same with all the channels. Okay, that looks good for the highlighted. Now we're going to go back to green. And for these, we want these values to be the lowest possible values. So what I'm going to do is just drop this to be as low as possible. So for hours, I'll be doing 22 because 22 is what it is for red. And I'll be doing the same for blue, which is just moving this black slider all the way down. Okay, so now that we have all these numbers equal to each other and all these numbers equal to each other, we're going to go back over to adjustments and kind of bring out the Whirlpool galaxy as it's kind of faded right here. So what we're going to do now is going to be opening up, go back to adjustments and selecting the curve adjustments. And this is where we are going to be importing your curves that I told you guys to download before. So we're going to press this 4 lines up top, press load curves preset. And mine's already loaded in, but for example, you go down to downloads, curves, make sure to extract the file after you download it, and just select ArcSign H100. That's the main one we're going to be using for this workshop. That's all we need. Since I already have it, I won't be doing that, but you guys should select that and press load. After you have that in there, we're just going to go down into ArcSign 100, which now the image looks pretty white, a lot more lighter, but that's where we go back to adjustments and do the levels, which now we just bring it back down. And what I'm doing here, I'm making sure that I'm not losing too much signal, but I'm making sure that it's not too bright as it was before. So I say, this looks pretty good. It's pretty solid. A little bit of space here. This is all our data, and we don't want to, if we go over here, it will cut it off. So I say this is pretty good. And now we're going to do the exact same thing another time. So curves, arcsine H100, adjustments, levels, bringing that down. And again, not going too close to it. Just going to zoom in. Yeah, it looks pretty solid. You do not have to have an inky black background. I wouldn't suggest doing that, as that introduces a lot of noise. And what I mean by noise is that when we zoom in, for example, if I were to do this, actually you can't see it too. Actually, if I zoom in, kind of can see it, kind of not. Makes the image just a little bit more grainy. So we'll not be doing that. Let's see if I can get back to how I had it before. Yeah, that looks pretty solid to me. Yeah, that looks pretty solid to me. Okay, so now we have the galaxy. We're gonna just close this out, don't need that right now. Now we have the galaxy somewhat visible in our image, but we have this sort of gradient over here that we do not want in our image. So to remove this gradient, we're gonna make an artificial flat frame, which we will subtract all this light from. How we do that is first we're gonna have to make a timestamp, or not a timestamp, but just a stamp of this whole image that we're currently seeing now. And how we do that is Control, Shift, Alt, and E. Let it load, and it just made a layer of what you're currently seeing. If you guys go to the PDF, I believe the Mac version is also on there for number 4. Okay, awesome. So now all we want to do here is now do Control A and Control C. So now we have copied the whole frame that we're currently seeing right now. We're gonna have to start up a new project. So we go over at the top right over here, Home, New File, and since we've copied that, it's copied all the preset settings for the file that we just copied. So we can just press Create, and then just do Control V. So now we have a separate project with the photo that we just created. Now we're gonna make the flat frame. So what I'm gonna do over here, go one below the color sampler tool to the spot healer tool. And we're just gonna remove, this is also up here. This is a good way of resizing it to however you like. But all we're gonna do here is just click, hold down, just go over the Whirlpool galaxy. And poof, it's gone. So right now I'm just going through and removing anything that I do not want to be subtracted when I do the subtraction later on. Yeah, so I'm just going through, looking, this could probably be a galaxy up here. I'm also going to remove some bright stars because that could also dim them down later down the road. Just clicking on all of these, just seeing any objects that I just want to keep within this image. This could potentially be a galaxy. You don't have to get all of them, but I think that's pretty good, all the bright ones. Awesome. So now I've taken out all the objects that I want to keep in my image. Yeah, so now we're gonna go up at the top, press filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. Hopefully I said that right. Gaussian blur. And we're just going to do this blur not too heavily, but just to the point where we don't see the stars actually within the frame. So I say that's pretty good. You don't want to go too overboard on that. So just press OK. And now you have your artificial flat frame. Now we're going to go over to the tab over here, back to our main project. Press deselect. Now we're going to go over this tab over here, press image, apply image, and we're going to change the source to the one that we just created. And we're going to change the blending to subtract. So now, as you can see here, we've subtracted the majority, if not all, of the gradient. So we can just press OK. So now our image is looking pretty good. Now we're probably going to be going on to color grading because it's looking kind of gray right now. So I'm going to click on this layer right here, just click on it, and we're going to do Control J, which makes a copy of the layer. Now we're going to be going up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Now, let me change the zoom on this because I don't want it to have too much zoom. It's pretty good. Actually, a little bit more. It's just personal preference. And now into the slide channel, we're going to make slight adjustments, just personal preference on what I think is pretty good. Probably not going to touch the exposure. Probably going to set the contrast just a little bit higher. Let me zoom in a little bit more so I can see the grain. When moving this, the grain goes a little higher, so I'm probably just going to really slight on that. Highlights. Yeah, I'll make the galaxy a little bit brighter. And shadows, I'll make the background a little darker. So I say that's pretty good. You don't have to be too crazy on this. You don't have to be too strict. Just whatever you think looks good. I don't suggest touching the whites or blacks. That usually results in a more grainier look in your final image. So I wouldn't really suggest touching this. Yeah, so we're done with the light channel. So we're just going to scroll down and do one of the more important steps, which is color grading. So with color grading, we're actually going to be adjusting the colors, the midtones, and the highlights. We do not touch shadow because when we touch shadow, the whole background changes, and we do not want to do that. So I'm just going to do Control Z, and we're going to go up to this midtones over here. Usually, how I like to do it, I would usually pull up a picture of the Whirlpool Galaxy on Google and just compare the two and make sure I get the colors right. I personally know how to make the colors right because I've done this so many times, but I really do suggest you guys go on Google and just choose the colors based on that. So I'm looking for a magenta bluish for this image. Don't want to do, and basically what this does, this measures how much of the color grading you're doing, so I don't want to be too much on it. This is the color. I say that's a pretty good bluish magenta. We still see some purples, but there's still some blues. And then we can adjust the lightness of the midtones, which I will bring up just quite a bit since it's a little dim right now. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to go on to highlights. For the highlights, it's going to be mainly these two portions here that we're changing. And usually with the Whirlpool Galaxy, if you guys have it on Google, the two cores of the galaxies are bright yellow. So we're just going to max this out, put it onto like a yellowish color, which that looks pretty good to me. Then I'm just going to adjust the brightness of the highlights. I don't want to blow out the whole core. And what I mean by that is just like take out any of the details that we need. But I want to make it bright enough to where it looks pretty natural and good. So I think that looks pretty good. Just gonna press OK here. Solid. Getting somewhere. Really good enough. So the next thing we're gonna do is make the two cores a lot more yellow. So what we're gonna do Control J. We'll click on here, then do Control J. So now we have made a copy of the image that we just did. And we're gonna go right back up to the filter and do camera off. Do not press any of these because these are your presets that you already, or not presets, but it's your previous filter edits I've done. So if you click on it, it will just do those and it won't open up anything. So definitely go down and just press camera off filter. Okay, now we're not going to focus on anything but only the chords. So I'm going to just come back right down to the color grading, make the highlights, the nice solid gold along with the midtones, which look pretty solid. What I'm doing here is just looking at the chords and making sure it's the color that I want, which this looks pretty good. I might just the brightness a little bit, making sure it's not too blown out. Yeah, that looks solid. And we don't have to worry about the whole image. I know we just made it quite yellow, but we don't have to worry about that. So just press OK. And now we have our two layers. So this eye icon just shows like showing and showing the layer below. So now we have our two layers, one yellow for the cores and one just normal color grading on the whole galaxy. So now we're gonna select the one that we just had with the yellow and do a layer mask. What this does when you click on it, makes this white box over here. And it'll be better if I can actually show you and explain it on the way. So we're gonna just do control, well, when selecting this, just click on this and do Control I. Now, as you can see, it went to the layer right below it. It doesn't do anything when I take it off and on. So basically what this does is it lets us select certain areas that we want to include from this layer to go onto this layer. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll show you in a little bit. I'll show you actually right now. So since this window doesn't have a paintbrush tool, we're going to just go back up here, workspace, and graphics and web. So now we're just going to click on the layers so we can see all our layers and go over to this left side over here and do the paintbrush tool. Awesome. Okay, so from here, we're gonna make sure you're selected on the black square and not the actual image, or you will be painting on the actual image. Let me make sure I do that. So select the black square and make sure your color at this bottom left over here is fully white. So now you can adjust the size up here too. I'm just gonna do the middle over here and just paint the areas that I want to have a yellowish hue to. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, awesome. But now the blending of it's kind of off. So the way that we fix this is making sure that we're still selected on this. We're going to go up to filter, blur, and the same Gaussian blur we did before. And now when viewing it, we're just gonna select how much of a blur that we want to make it look natural, but not too much a blur where it's like just completely dies it down. So I say that looks pretty good. We have a good yellows within this galaxy, good yellows within the core of this one. So I'm gonna go okay with that. And now we have our yellows within our two cores. So now from here, I'm looking at the steps where we're at right now. Um, Awesome. Okay. We are going to make the surrounding gases more visible within our image. So now what we're going to do is do Control, Shift, Alt, and E to make a screenshot of the whole thing. We can't do Control J because that will just make a duplicate of this layer, but we need both layers, so we just do Control, Shift, Alt, and E. And now we have a layer of just one single layer of what we're currently seeing. Now from here, we're going to want to go up to Filter. Let me see, actually. Oh, we're making two copies because, yeah. So we're just going to make a second copy. You can do the Control, Alt, Shift, E again, or just Control J. It doesn't matter for this one. And then we're going to go up to Camera Raw. And our goal for this is we're going to just stick within the light channel of this. Going to zoom in quite a bit on the galaxy. And we're going to try to get out the surrounding gases. So I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit. Good contrast. We can actually see the distinction between the gases. So I'll be very slight on this. Get the highlights. Oh, that brings it out too. And we're only focusing on the gases. We don't have to worry about the cores. Yeah, that looks pretty solid to me. So now we've gotten the gases out. Doesn't have to be too distinct. We can just press OK. Now from here, we're actually going to do the same thing as we did before with the layer mask. So click on layer mask, go to this white box, do Control I to invert it. And all we're going to do now is just color in any of the areas that we want that gas to be. I'm going to make this a little smaller. And making sure that we don't select the cores. And I'm letting go of the click, so just in case if I do mess it up, can always do Control Z. Like there, yeah. So I say that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more at the top over here. And same thing again, make sure you're clicking on this. Filter, uh, blur, then Gaussian blur. What this does, it makes it look a lot more natural, just so it doesn't look too splotchy. Here, I say it still looks a little splotchy. Can actually do it a little bit more to the left. Actually, can I zoom out? No, I can't. Okay, we're gonna just ballpark this. I'd say that looks pretty good. So I'm satisfied with it. Press OK. Can just zoom out so it looks pretty good. Yeah, it looks solid. We've got all the gases that we wanted. And again, we're just gonna do that Control Shift Alt and E to make a stamp. So now, let me see where we at. Make two of these, so just do another Control Shift Alt and E. And now we're just gonna go back up to Windows, and we're gonna change our worst workspace back to photography. So now we have these adjustments. So now what I want to do from here is go over to the adjustments over here. This one of the second last ones, and it's going to be the selective color adjustment. And from here, I'm just going to adjust the colors very slightly to make it more of the colors that I wanted. So the magentas, Just adjust it how you like it. So maybe I want it to be a little bit more purple, like that. It's all personal preference. Everyone's gonna look quite different. And I wouldn't touch the blacks. Now we're gonna go up to yellows because I do wanna slightly adjust those. And I'm just doing right now anything that just looks good with my own eyes. Again, just more personal preference. Don't want to too overboard. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe even I can go to the blues and just adjust it a little bit. Obviously, like I can introduce the blues at the edge. That looks pretty nice, actually. Yeah, it's solid. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, let's see what the yellows do. See, I'm experimenting with myself. Yeah, that looks pretty solid to me. Maybe slightly more. Awesome. Okay, after you have something you like, we're gonna do that Control, Shift, Alt, and E again twice. Awesome. So now what I'm gonna do is go up to Filter and Camera Raw one more time. And now what we're gonna do is just make slight adjustments. So the back is a little bit more dark. Let me change the zoom again. Let's do 50. Actually, let's do 33. Oh, actually 22 is fine. Just bring out the pop just a little bit more. Don't want it too overboard. A lot more darker here. I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe even do 50 so I can look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'm gonna go slight down to the color right here, and you can add just a teensy bit of bright vibrance and saturation. You don't want too overboard on this. I'm actually probably just gonna go with 5 for both. Actually, might not even do saturation. And what I'm doing here is I can see between the two different images. So I think that looks pretty good. I don't really need to do too much more with that. So just press OK. And now our next option, or our next step, we're going to do Control, Shift, Alt, and E twice again. This just ensures that you don't lose any steps when doing your processing. And if something goes wrong, you always have that layer before. So now we're going to actually bring out more of the details within the galaxy. So what this does, we're going to go up to Filter, Other, High Pass. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not go overboard with this. This filter introduces a lot of noise. So all I'm really going to be looking for is just getting the slight structure within the spirals. Even this is like maybe too much. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Like just have this subtle structure right here and nothing else. So now we can press OK. And we're going to click on this layer that we just did and change the layer type to overlay. And as you can see, it has introduced a lot more noise, but a lot more clarity. So now from here, we're going to make the layer mask again. Hopefully you guys are getting used to that. Do Control I, invert it. And we're going to have to go back to that window, workspace, graphics and web to get the little brush. And we're just going to highlight the areas that we want to be really nice and crisp in detail. I'll even do the centers. That looks pretty good. And again, we're just going to go with the filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Not too much of a difference here, so I'll just press OK. Just making sure. You also can do an alt click. When hovering over this alt click, you can see how much that you blur it. That looks like a pretty good blur to me. Doesn't look too off and has a lot more detail. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll do Control Shift Alt and E again. And just one more time. And even sometimes with this, actually it's fine. If you guys do have a personal preference with this, you can always change the opacity of it. I actually usually do that, but it's okay. This one looks pretty fine, so I'll just keep it as is. It does have quite a bit of noise, but it's okay. So now I did not actually give you guys this data. This is how we would end it on the actual workshop, but I did not give you guys this data. I will upload it along with this video and the PDF, the hydrogen data. So this is just an add-on. Technically, you guys are done here. Well, actually not necessarily. You would definitely have to go to step 34 and just do that slight noise reduction. But overall, it's pretty much done. Um, from here, make sure we have this selected. We're gonna go over to home and just go back to our files and make sure you have this hydrogen file that I will upload. Just drag it right along into Photoshop in the main menu. So now it's opened it up. This is actually a grayscale image. So we got to go up to images, mode, change it to RGB. So now we can actually change the color of this image. From here, we're gonna actually go over to filter, camera, and go right down to color grading. Just make this as red as possible. We're trying to make these areas red as possible, but without making the background too red, which I'll probably try to do like this. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Don't really have to do anything with the blending. Yeah, just press OK. So now we have quite a bit of red here. What we're gonna do now, we have to go back to window, workspace, back to photography. We're gonna have to do a little bit of switching here and there. Now we're gonna go to adjustments and do a slight level curve on the red. Just gonna want to bring that out without bringing too much of the black to turn red. And to make sure that we're not introducing any more red throughout the whole image, we're gonna go back to adjustments, curves, and if you see over on the left side, there's this black dropper tool. If you select this, then hover over your image. Choose any spot that you want to be black. Boom. Awesome. Now we actually don't see any of the image, but that's what we wanted. So now I'm going to go back up to this levels layer that we had, just slightly adjust it to where these areas are visible, which I think is pretty good. Then I'm going to go back to the curves, do the same thing. Just make sure that those reds are quite visible, but also making sure that the the blacks are pure blacks. Let me go back. Awesome. So that looks pretty good. We're gonna do the Control Shift Alt and E. Oh my God, what did I do? Now Control Z, Control Z. Okay, Control Shift. Okay, there we go. I don't know what I just did. It's okay, we have Control Z. So now what I'm gonna do is go to this Hue brush tool. Oh, not this one. We're gonna make sure it's the spot brush tool. Make it quite smaller. Just gonna highlight the two cores of the galaxies because we do not want those to be red. Okay, this looks pretty solid to me. So what I'm going to actually do now is just do Control A and Control C. We're going to go back to the file that we had before, just Control V that right in. And see, it's going to bring up that file right here. So now it's covering everything. So what we're going to do is change the layer type to linear dodge add. And as you can see, it's kind of off-centered. It's not directly on the galaxy where we need it. So that's where this tool comes in, the move tool. We're going to grab this, zoom quite a bit in, try to measure up those stars within the galaxy, if you can kind of see them. Just measure up the patterns. You see how there's 3 stars right here? I'm going to measure it up with this one. It doesn't perfectly measure up, so then after you do that, you can just use your arrow keys on your keyboard, and voila. And now this has affected the star colors throughout the whole image. So what we're going to do is another layer mask. You have the layer right here. Do another layer mask. Again, Control I to invert it. Go to Window again, Workspace, and go back to Graphics and Web to select that paintbrush tool. Now I'm just going to highlight all the areas within the galaxy that I want to have hydrogen. That looks pretty good. Then again, we're going to do blur, Gaussian blur, just making sure that it looks all subtle. That looks pretty good to me. Let's press OK. And now for our final step, we're going to do Control Shift Alt E again, twice. This is going to drastically make it longer because of how many layers we have. So I'm just going to do a Control J for this one. Just does the same thing after you do the Control Shift Alt and E. And we're going to go up to Filter, Camera Raw, and just zoom into the galaxy just quite a bit and go down right over here. Did I miss it? No. I'm going to go with the Details tab. Do not touch the color noise reduction because that does take out the hydrogen. So just leave that. And we're going to just slightly do a noise reduction. I wouldn't try to go above 25 on this. So I'd probably just go with like, for this image, I'll probably go with 25. Actually, I'll go with 20. Maybe actually even 15. 17. Just trying to make it so it balances out detail and noise. I think that looks pretty good. So just press OK after that. And congratulations, you have now just processed an image of the Whirlpool galaxy. So from here, at least this is just how I would go, or let me rephrase this. This is how you export it. And if you guys could post these images that you guys processed within the Discord channel, Astrophotography in the UAS one, that would be greatly appreciated. And we're just going to go up to File, Export, Export As. I think my computer's being a little slow too, considering that it's not really meant for Photoshop. So the more layers that we have on that right over there, as you can see, is the slower it's going to get. So it's struggling right now. But you would go over there and hopefully a window pops up any second now. Probably just going to cut this bit out. Maybe not. Okay, we don't have to. Okay, awesome. So now it's popped up. Let's wait for it to load. This might take a while to load on your computer. Don't you worry, it will just take a second because of how large this file is. And since I want it to be below 10 megabytes to upload to Discord, I'll just keep it at JPEG at 6 because 7 would make it way larger. Awesome. So now all you do is just export, and I just saved the desktop. And that's it, guys. Please post these in the astrotalky channel. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and the steps will be posted too, and the file with the hydrogen data. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed.